I want to record a quick video for you talking about this concept of numbering your episodes and when it may actually not be a good idea. And I don't hear many people talking about this, but it's something worth considering if you are a bit of a newer show. So just to give you some quick background, my name is Misbah Hawk. I am the founder at Pod Mahal. We basically are a YouTube and podcast production company. We do done for you services, and we also do coaching and consulting services to help people do it themselves. I've been doing this since 2016. My very first show helped me land my dream job and internship within 52 episodes or within 1 year. My second show, I helped my boss at the time, who was a professional athlete, helped him launch that. That became a show that was 1 million plus downloads and a successful client acquisition channel. And ever since then, I've been going all in with the work that I'm doing at Pod Mahal. So the thing that I want to get back to is basically the perception. Okay, we're going to consider perception here because I know it sounds sleazy when you think about it like that, but it actually is worth thinking about, because if you don't, then you're going to get told this when you actually do reach out to some of the guests that you really want. And remember, this is something that there are these weird status games at play when you are inviting really famous people onto your podcast, okay? And so one of the things that you are going to run into if you're trying to get somebody really big in your niche, okay, not just famous in general, but I'm saying even in your niche, in your industry, somebody who's considered really big, right? Like you might not know, compared to The Rock, okay, you might not know Tom Ferry, but Tom Ferry is a very famous person inside of the real estate industry. He's a big thought leader and has been for quite a while. So if you are in the real estate industry and you hit up Tom Ferry for episode number 4, hey, I would love to have you on my show, one of the things that you're going to get hit with is, okay, sorry, come back to me when you have 50 episodes or 100 episodes. And this is something that's really important to keep in mind, because I've heard this dropped from multiple really big people in my industry right now, where somebody like Noah Kagan, okay, I actually had him on my very first podcast, which was cool. But Noah Kagan, he's the founder of AppSumo, which is like an $80 million plus company. And he basically has said publicly that, okay, if you have done 100 episodes and or if you have a certain amount of 5-star reviews or something like that, he actually will consider that show if he gets pitched. But that's one of his filters for who's serious and who's not, right? Versus somebody else like Ali Abdaal, very famous YouTuber, right? He just dropped this on a recent episode. He said, he's asking his guest about their process for turning down pods or choosing which ones to do. And he said that when he gets asked, hey, will you come on my podcast? He says, I'll be your 50th episode. And so what that does is if you are somebody who is in episode 4 or 5, what happens is you go, okay, cool. I will actually hit you back up. And on his end, on Ali Abdaal's end, he knows if this person even makes it there, I know how hard it is to do 50 episodes. I will gladly give them my time and do that. So there's a sense of, I don't want to say like you haven't done the work, because that's not true, right? It's like you're doing a lot of work, but there is a sense of people who are really big and have a big audience, have been doing it as well for a long time. They are going to take you seriously at the 50 episode mark and or at the 100 episode mark. That doesn't mean you shouldn't just shoot your shot sometimes and take the risk and go for it and ask, especially if they are somebody who's not like crazy level of fame where you're going to get that rejection. Because I will say in my first 10 episodes of my very first podcast, they were all really big people in my niche at the time, which was in the CrossFit world and the Olympic weightlifting world. So I had the top athletes, top coaches that were saying yes from episode 1. And the reason that I was able to make that work and why it worked out was because I got people who, if you were to look at like a spider web, you could be like, oh yeah, this person's connected to this person knows this one. Like they are competitors with this person. This one talks to this person. They're friends. So what would happen is when I would pitch the guest, I'd be like, oh, by the way, this person have recently come on. Here's their episode. And I would link up those episodes. And this worked really well, which was the fear of missing out. So a lot of these big brands and coaches and athletes were all like, yeah, if this person said yes, like I want to be next to that too. I want to be in this lineup. Why haven't I been asked yet? That's one way of creating that reaction. But the other thing is that it also is this like litmus test, right? Oh, wow, if this really famous big person in our niche has said yes to you and this other one and this other one, then okay, you must be a safer bet to take on. So that's something that's really important to consider. Is it's not impossible to land really big name guests before that 50 or 100 episode mark. It's entirely possible. But that is a strategy on how you do that. Okay, that's one of the ways that is going to be compelling enough for somebody to go, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that as well, right? Now, coming back to numbering your episodes, I'm sure you can see now like why this is maybe a disadvantage, because if you are numbering your episodes until you are at the 50 episode mark or even the 100 episode mark, it is almost a disservice. It's doing you a disservice. It's taking attention away from the impact that you could be having if that number was not there, right? So if you had something that was like how to lose 10 pounds with intermittent fasting, I'm just making this up, how to lose 10 pounds with intermittent fasting, and then it says episode 9, okay? That is not, compare that with if you just saw how to lose 10 pounds with intermittent fasting. That's all you'd be thinking about or focusing on. If there was a guest name at the end of that, okay, cool, you'd be thinking about the guest. But you're not thinking about any numbers here. You're not like, oh, is this a new show, an old show? You're judging it purely off of the title of the episode itself, right? Up until that 50 episode mark, it doesn't start working in your favor until you're beyond that point, because then what it does is it's a signal, right? It's a signal to other guests that you might have coming on, or to people who are really, they love podcasts. They know that world really well. And so they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like you've done at least 52 weeks of this, right? If you have over 50 episodes. So there's a little bit of respect earned there, which is okay, cool. I'll do your show or I'll consider this. So when you see somebody like Joe Rogan or another really big podcast that's been around, it's like episode 545 or episode 1696. You're like, whoa, this person, you do the math in your head real quick. You're like, one episode a week. Okay, 50. Like this person's been doing this for a very long time. And even if it's a short time, wow, they've been grinding. Like they've been doing 2 a week, 3 a week, which leads me to the strategy around this. So how do you bypass this curse that happens sometimes with a newer show? It's okay, do I just get really famous people and try to stack them and then play that game to get some of the bigger names that I want? Or what is the way to approach this without selling my soul and it feeling something like, this is not why I got into podcasting, right? This is what I have found to be a pretty good technique that is somewhat authentic and organic as well, right? Which is to get to episode 50 or even episode 100, let's say, right? 100 episodes would take you, technically, if you just did one a week, it would take you about 2 years. And that's, you only have a chance to miss 2 to 4 weeks over 2 years, and you would hit that, right? So then naturally the question is, how do you expedite that process? How do you do 2 times per week and still maintain quality? Because that's usually the dilemma. You're like, I could do 2 times per week, but I don't know if it'd be as good. It's already so hard to do 1. Like, how am I going to maintain that? And so the way to do this is that the second upload, the second episode that's going to be published per week. By the way, the reason for this, Bill Burr, he's a very famous comedian, and he's somebody who is known to, like, he has a great podcast. It's mainly solo. It's mainly him ranting. It's hilarious. And it's something that, this piece of advice that he gave another comedian has always stuck with me. It's been over 5 years now. But I remember him saying to this comedian, do your podcast solo. It's going to be bad for a year, okay? But after a year, you're going to get very good at writing on stage, okay? And writing on stage is like being able to come up with things in the moment and actually write like the way you would, like writing a joke. Instead of on paper, you were writing it in the moment. You're able to really improvise and be quick on your feet. And his whole idea was that doing it twice a week is essential, because just when somebody is forgetting about you, like if you release on Monday, okay, by the time Thursday comes around, it's like, oh, I forgot what happened in the first half of the week. Boom, you drop another one, right? You're there again. Oh, yeah, Bill Burr. Okay. And over the weeks and months and years, this becomes a thing where you're like, oh man, where's Bill? Like I'm looking forward to hearing what he's up to, or like what his latest take is on this or that. It creates this deeper relationship with the people who are listening, even if they don't listen to every single episode. So if you have people who are just catching one out of the two, but you're pulling in a new community or new type of avatar for your listener base, that's still a really big win, right? So anyways, that's the concept behind being able to do it at least twice a week. And if you do it twice a week, that times 52 weeks is essentially 104, right? So you have the ability to hit 100 episodes within, I would say, 1 year. And if you went really aggressive, you definitely have the ability to do it. And I would say 6 to 9 months, right? If you increased your upload schedule even more. But something to keep in mind is that if your show is, let's say, it's in person, okay, and you do all your episodes in person, you fly out to the guest or the guest flies out to you, that is a very hard format for you to envision yourself. Like, how am I going to do 2 or 3 of these per week? That seems impossible or very expensive, right? So the way to do that is that you've got your main meat for the week, the main episode that is going to be going out, the highest production quality one or whatever you want, right, with the guest. That you drop as the main episode, the flagship episode for the week, right? But the second episode, or even the third, if you're going that aggressive for the week, is going to be something that is either solo or it is framed around a concept or segment that allows it to be of an easier upload, right? So for example, the second upload, if you don't have to think about any guests, right, and you just have to sit down and record the thing, that gives you much more control of your production schedule and your destiny, right? For you to get to the 50 episodes or the 100 episodes, you can do that much quicker. You can see a path there. But when you're doing just guests and you never do any solo stuff or consider that, you're going to go, okay, this is how long it took me to schedule like 2 or 3 of these people. I don't know if I can make that happen for me having consistently that amount of stuff, right? So that's why I'm a big advocate for the solo episodes. And part of it, the hard part with it, yes, is the fact that it is harder to be interesting when nobody else is there or around, but it's a good skill for you to build as somebody who is podcasting, right? It's a way for you to develop a segment of your audience that is actually super interested in what you have to say and is not just coming for the big names or the guest. Prime example of this is Theo Von's podcast, okay, this past weekend. Theo Von show is something where I'm a fan of the solo stuff. I listen to some of the guest stuff here and there, but I am more of a fan for when Theo sits there and he's himself. He talks for an hour. Like, I could keep those episodes on repeat. And part of it is those episodes don't get as many views as the ones that are with guests, right? Of course, when you have David Spade or somebody really famous come on your show, Jocko, right? It's okay, those episodes are really big, but there is something different, right? Like, you get 2 sides to the personality. You get 2 different types of vibes when somebody is with a guest, a famous guest, and then when somebody is with just themselves and you, right? So that is something, keep in mind, it is going to be slower to grow. Those episodes will not get as many downloads or views, but part of it is that's okay. You're using that for the purpose of hitting the volume that you need. Because remember, a lot of these guests that you might be trying to get who are like at that 50 or 100 episode marker, they're not going and listening. They're not going to go listen to every single episode that you've done. What they do is they're going to typically scroll, right? They're going to go scroll through your feed and go, okay, who's been on? What are the titles about? Can I get a sense of, is this a good bet or not. And so part of it is you can show a lot of topical authority and expertise by, one, you just have more control when you do the solo episodes of what you're going to talk about, what you're going to title it. There's no other guest for you to keep in mind. There's also this natural thing that when a guest is on, that you have to give them all of the attention, right? It's rude for you to be taking up all the space sometimes, and it's people prefer you keep it on them. And remember, you're also getting in their audience base when they come through. So you're not really even performing just for your audience. You're performing for their audience and making sure that you can win them over. But the solo stuff gives you this freedom that is, I think, just so much more control. And let me give you an example of a solo episode, a format that I'm doing with this person who he's a retired police officer. He lives in Wisconsin. He used to also be a radio host back in the day. And basically his format, he's very good at. He's got the radio voice and everything. He's very good, like on his feet and all that kind of stuff. He's going to be doing, he does a lot of guest ones, and he does them in a way that where it's live, one and done type situation, right? But the segment we're going to be adding on is Q&As, right? So there's the way that you have radio back in that day where like people would call in to the radio and you would get to entertain 2 or 3 calls. Like that same vibe you can achieve with a solo show, right? Is you can have people submit their questions and you can answer that. And then it makes it something that doesn't feel a solo, right? But it's still an easier for you to duplicate and replicate that format. It's still high production quality, but it's lower time investment in some ways versus with a guest. Like I said, if it's something that's in person or really like you put 10 hours of research into it or whatever, you're going to go, yeah, I can't do 2 or 3 of these, but you got to change the format of what you're doing for that second upload or the third upload. That's the only way it becomes more doable or somewhat doable, right? Is you create a format that you can sustain, right? So that's something that I want you to keep in mind if you are in a place where you're trying to grow your podcast, but you're also, using episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, something that I can, and you also have this intention of getting some bigger guests, right? If you're somebody who's like mainly like you're not interested in getting a bunch of really big folks, you're cool with talking to people that are around you and just people you can access already where that's not going to be an issue, then that's great. Don't worry about this, right? But chances are, if you're trying to grow your show, you are thinking of who can I have on, what people can I have on who will increase the visibility of my show. And naturally, like they're also aligned with what I want to learn about or who I'm interested in anyways. This is the way that dynamic works a lot of times when you reach out to a guest. And so before you even do that, I'm giving you the heads up on that. Okay. 50 episodes and 100 episodes is the marker for a lot of those people. And so keep that in mind when you are using the numbering strategy to do. I understand that the other route that you could go, we use this for that show that I helped my boss launch, right? It was seasonal. So we did 10 episodes or 12 episodes a season. And it was like, we would roll right into the next season. We'd sometimes take a week break, but we would roll right into the next one. And me and him did 10 seasons. And then after that, they've continued it or whatever. But it's like the first 10 seasons that I did, it was really like S1E1, S1E2, S4E5. That's how like the header for some of your episode titles will look, right? And I know that it feels like, oh man, that seems really important. Maybe I could have that. You don't need it, okay? It used to be something that is, okay, after season 10, you feel really proud of it, or you feel like you've made this limited series where you can refer people, go check out season 1, check out season 2. If that's central for the type of show that you're doing, then by all means do that. But that also falls in the same category of numbering it, episode 1, episode 2, because somebody can in their mind calculate, like they can go, okay, if a season has 10 episodes, like they've done 50 episodes, right, after 5 seasons, or they've done 100 episodes after 10 seasons. So part of it is, again, you don't want that to work against you. And in today's day and age, because that episode number isn't that important for them to go find that episode, right? Truly, what it is like, you tell people to just search for the episode itself or search the exact name of the title. What that does is you also get credit for the search, right? So if somebody is going to go search your show manually in Google, there's some advantages that happen when that's repeated hundreds of times, right? So, oh, this seems to be a show people are searching for. Must be something here, right? So you get people used to doing that, which can be really great. Sure, is it an extra step or two for them to get there? Yeah. But the flip side is if you are Instagram stories or in an email newsletter, like you're linking the episode itself, they're already directly going there, right? So the numbers are not really used for much outside of just identifying when you need access to that episode. And usually this will happen from consumer, so the person who's listening. Okay, episode 31, I know I found the right one, right? Or for me personally, and with my first podcast, I used it as because I was so consistent with that one, I was able to remember certain timelines and parts of my life by what episode number I'm looking at. So at episode 15, oh, yep, okay, I had talked to the person who was going to give me the internship by this point. That was my guest number 15. Okay, by episode 30, here's where I was. I had, moved across the country to do this internship. And okay, by episode 50, yep, I had my dream job at this point. I had moved up to the Bay Area and now I'm doing that. It was a very nice way for me selfishly to keep track of those things. But if that doesn't really matter to you that much, because at the end of the day, you can go on something like Apple Podcasts or whatever, right? And when your show comes up, it'll show what's the total episodes. Oh, it has 100 episodes, right? Or 200 episodes. You can get that data if and when you need to. And if and when you need to flex it, right? Hey, I've done 100 plus episodes. When you're pitching a guest, you can include that information in there. But in most cases, especially because so much of the work and so much of what you're thinking about and whatnot is going to be before the episode 50 mark and before the episode 100 mark, and you're hoping that you can get there and sustain what you're doing that long and be into what you're doing that long, take advantage of the fact that lose the episode numbers and take advantage of doubling down on the titles and making them great topics and something that stands alone as its own piece of content, regardless of whether it's episode 3 or 300. That shouldn't need to be something that is weighing down the visibility of your episode. So that's just a way to think about it. It's not set in stone, right? This could change. It's a cultural and societal shift. As we consume media differently, this could change, right? But it's a nuance that if you are trying to optimize and improve the performance of your show, you want to consider these things, or at least evaluate it and make sure, yep, that is actually worth it for me to keep doing or not. Make sure that it's a conscious decision and not just something you're slapping up there just to make yourself feel good. Yes, I did 9 episodes or whatever. Okay. So something to keep in mind, you can always change this stuff too. I've done conferences and stuff where I've spoken and people have asked some of these questions, and I'm always surprised at how people don't realize that you can go back and edit episode numbers if you ever decide to add it all back in there, right? You could go back and add episode 1, 2, 3, 4 if you really wanted to. So this is not all set in stone. It can be adjusted, but it's definitely important enough for you to keep in mind, especially if growing with guests and landing bigger guests is a part of your growth strategy with podcasting. So I appreciate you hanging out. Make sure to check out the free tools and templates and all that good stuff in the description below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you, and make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out and spending time with me, and I will see you on the next one.